Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Oviedo City Council meeting. It is Monday, April 20th, 2015. It's about 6:30 p.m. We have all members of council present. For our Pledge of Allegiance this evening, we have a Boy Scout troop with us. It is Troop 931. Gentlemen, why don't you come on up and help lead us in the pledge, please.
All of you. There you go.
All right, will the audience please put their hand over their heart and Scouts salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Young man, why don't you tell me the troop, where you guys meet, and why you're all here.
All right, well, my name's Ethan Brewer. We meet at RTS by Alfred Trails.
Yep, right on Mitchell Hammock.
Yep, and then we're here for Communications Merit Badge.
Well, great. Guys, thank you for coming down and joining us this evening. Have a seat. Enjoy the proceedings. If you have any questions afterwards, just ask Councilman Brayton. Chief White, would you do the honors of the invocation for us, please? Thank you.
Sure, be glad to.
How are
Good
you
evening.
tonight, Chief?
What's that?
I said, how are you tonight?
Very good, now that the storms have passed.
While we have everybody here, I just want to make one mention. The history harvest that the Historical Society did on Saturday looked like it was a big success. Can you just fill us in a little quick on that?
Yeah, we were grateful for our partnership with the Riches program, which is affiliated with the History Department at University of Central Florida. And they were the facilitators in cooperation with the Historical Society. And all of the data that came in and artifacts and photographs and so forth that were archived will be available on the Riches website for any student throughout the state of Florida and beyond to be able to see. So our town is really expanding in its knowledge base and offering. So it was great. I think we had about 30 folks that brought in things to capture, and we were so pleased we'd like to do it again sometime.
It was exceptional, Chief. I mean, they were scanning, photographing, archiving, writing in the history of the thing, of
Yep.
the items, excuse me. Great
Yep.
job by everybody.
They did a great job. Even I think the roaches in the back of the Lawton House were categorized for that event. So if y'all would like to join me in
They
a word of
scan a
prayer.
chicken or anything? I'm just curious.
No chickens were scanned that
Okay,
day.
just checking.
If you'd like to join me in prayer, please do so at this time. Our Father God, we thank you for the protection that you afforded our community today with the weather that was upon us. And we pray as we enter into this hurricane season very soon that you bless this town and you protect us. And Father God, we particularly ask prayers tonight for a local family. A young student was involved in a very serious car crash over the weekend, that you would comfort and heal her and comfort the family and just embrace them as you always do. Lord, we pray for the Scouts that are here tonight. We thank you so much for their leadership and the future roles that they'll play in our community, and that you grant them good health and good safety and bless their families. Thank you for our council members, all our elected officials. Protect our military and public safety and their jobs. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chief, as always. All righty, our first order of business, we have one ceremonial item, and that is an Arbor Day proclamation. Arbor Day is coming up soon. Bobby, do you want to come fill everybody in on Arbor Day? I believe it's the 2nd of May this year here at City Hall.
Yes, sir. I believe it's the first weekend in May. All residents are provided, I believe it's 2 trees of the selection that we have. I can't remember the selection off the top of my head. I apologize.
That's okay.
But it's our yearly annual celebration of Arbor Day.
Excellent. So residents just have to bring their driver's license. They'll be confirmed that they're a city resident.
That is correct.
They can
Yes,
get
sir.
up to 2 trees per household.
Yes, sir.
All righty, great. And then anything that's left over, usually you let everybody go back through the line.
If we have remainders, yes, sir. But the past couple of years it's been tight.
It's been tight.
Very popular.
The line will be around the building. Well, I have a proclamation here that I'm going to read, and then we'll come by on Saturday the 2nd, and we'll read it again for everybody. Thank you, Bobby. Alrighty, our proclamation for Arbor Day this year reads, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Dominic Persampierre, Mayor of the City of Oviedo, Florida, do hereby proclaim Saturday, May 2nd, 2015, as Arbor Day in the City of Oviedo, Florida. And I urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our city's community forestry programs. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees, to gladden the hearts, and to promote the well-being of present and future generations. So we will read that proclamation one more time at Arbor Day, and I believe, Barbara, you have it for signature later. Okay, great. That is the end of our ceremonial items. Mr. Cobb, is there anything else that needs to come before the council?
No, sir.
All righty. Moving on to our next item of business, that is the approval of minutes for the March 30, 2015 work session and our April 6th regular session. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept. Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, call the vote. Motion on the table is to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our next item of business, it is our public comment portion. This is where anybody in the audience will have 3 minutes to come address the council on any item on the agenda or not. I do go by written request first, and I have one this evening from Ms. Judy Creel. Ms. Judy Creel and supporting staff.
Hi, I'm Judy Creel. I live at 2567 Westminster Terrace in Oviedo. And I'm here to thank you all for once again supporting our Children's Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May. I know it's the next item on the agenda. And you all have been so welcoming and inclusive of us every year, the last 3, maybe 4. I've been here 3. And just to give you a few items, as you're aware, mental health is just as vital as physical health to every young person's well-being. Across the nation, 1 in 5 children and teens has a mental health challenge. That's your neighbors, that's your fellow scouts, that's maybe your children. It may be a small issue, it may be a large issue. And that these issues are treatable and that treatment works. So we want to ensure that everybody goes and finds it. 80% of those 1 in 5 don't get the help they need. Some of it is because they don't know where to go, but a lot of it's because there's this stigma surrounding it. And we don't want to admit it, or we don't want to think it could be. Whatever it might be, we want to help and ask you all to understand that a child with a mental health challenge is a child or a teenager first. They could be a musician, they could be anything, a productive member of their community. And to please kind of look beyond that diagnosis, that shell around them, and look at them as a person. Our all-volunteer Children's Cabinet of Seminole County, of which wonderful Ms. Tricia Teal of Oviedo is the chair, governs a children's mental health initiative for all of Seminole County. And on the website, seminolechildren.org, there are some tips of discovering if your child might have a mental illness. There's some resources of where you can turn, support groups, family things, all of that. Again, that's seminolechildren.org. What else can you do if you want to help or get help? We have a new Facebook page, Children's Mental Health Matters, Seminole County. Easy, hopefully, to remember. It's a little long. We also have a new Instagram site through the cabinet, which is Semco Kids, Seminole County Kids, SEMCO Kids. We're going to put your proclamation on those sites, so we urge you to look at them and like them. If you need immediate resources, call 211. It's free. There's a mental health counselor on staff 24 hours a day. You don't have to give your name, but there's someone to talk to whenever you need them, and they can link you to local resources right here. We've been urging them to get more Seminole County resources in their database. And finally, we would urge you all to wear green on May 7th. May 7th is National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, and we are hoping that we see a lot of green around Seminole, especially here in Oviedo, because we all happen to live here. Felipe is our cultural competency coordinator on the initiative, and we all live here, and we'd love to see that. So thank you again.
It is absolutely our pleasure. You are actually on the consent agenda because
Yes.
usually we do not have folks who come down for their proclamations. So, Council, if it's all right with you, I'd like to read this one. I'll sign it, and that way you can take it with you.
Thank you.
All righty. So this is a proclamation of the City of Oviedo, and it is for, as we said, Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. And it reads, whereas mental health is as fundamental as physical health to the overall well-being of all children, youth, and families in Oviedo, and whereas mental health challenges such as bipolar disorder, major depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and severe anxiety affect 1 in every 5 families in Seminole County. And whereas treatment success rates for mental illness compare favorably to the rates for chronic physical illness, and whereas mental illness continues to remain shrouded in stigma and discrimination, keeping those with mental health challenges and their families from seeking care. And whereas increased public awareness of children's mental health issues may lead to reduced stigma and discrimination and earlier identification and treatment, resulting in lower health care and correctional costs, increased productivity, and stronger families. And whereas Oviedo recognizes that acceptance, dignity, and social inclusion for all, including children and youth with mental illness, should be promoted throughout our community. Now, therefore, I, Dominic Persampierre, Mayor of the City of Oviedo, Florida, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Month, and May 7th, 2015 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Day here in the City of Oviedo. So today I will set my hand on this in April 2015 and present you the proclamation, and thank you for all the work that you all do, because it is so important and sometimes you're just not thanked enough for it. So from the city.
No, thank you for
I want to invite you all.
Thank you, Ms. Steele.
Thank
you, everyone. Have a nice evening. That was the end of the written requests that I did have. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address council at this time? Hearing none, I will close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to the consent agenda. These are items 4 through 11. What is the pleasure of council?
Mayor,
Councilman
I'd
Henkin.
like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as
second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
No, sir. Looks good.
Councilman Schenk? Deputy Mayor? Councilman Britton?
Good.
Good. All righty. Hearing none, I will call the vote. The motion on the table is to adopt the consent agenda as presented. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our public hearing portion, item number 12. We have none this evening. Moving on to our first reading of ordinances, we do have 2. The first item is ordinance number 1621, Lawn Street right-of-way vacate. Mr. Cobb, I will turn, nope, I will not. I will go to Mr. Groot. Mr. Groot, can you read this ordinance by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning a 50-foot right-of-way located on a closed portion of Lawn Street between Lot 6 and Lot 11, South Park, 547 Oak Street and 567 Oak Street, containing approximately 0.156 acres, as depicted more specifically on the attached Exhibit A, providing for findings, a savings provision, conflict, severability, non-codification, and an effective date. That's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for City Council to approve a right-of-way vacation for a portion of Lawn Street, which is a 50-foot right-of-way. Letters were sent out to associated utility franchises and Seminole County requesting input. No objections to the vacation. The city engineer has reviewed all the data and determined that the closing and vacating of the right-of-way will not be to the detriment of the city or the public. The city has also requested that the applicants execute a utility easement agreement with the city over the closed right-of-way. It is recommended that City Council schedule a public hearing for Monday, May the 18th, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. At this time, I'd like to schedule the second public hearing, as Mr. Cobb mentioned, on May the 18th, 2015, here at Oviedo City Hall in the Oviedo City Council chambers at approximately 6:30 p.m., 400 Alexandria Boulevard, Oviedo, Florida, 32765.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Mr. Cobb, I do have a question. This seems to be a large parcel of land with access to streets. Why aren't we just selling this? I mean, it's 50 foot wide. It's 90 some odd feet, 136 feet deep. It could fit a house on it if somebody wanted to buy it and build a home.
I think because it's dedicated right-of-way, it's not city-owned property.
Okay.
And because it's dedicated right-of-way, we have to vacate our rights. If I'm saying incorrectly, Mr. Groot, please tell me. But we have to vacate our rights from that property, and then basically what happens is that half goes to one property owner, half
Right.
goes to the other property owner.
Okay.
And if it were city-owned property, then yes, we'd be bringing you a bill of sale to consider. But
If it were fee simple owned property, that was a great question, first of all, and a great answer. But if it was fee simple owned property as opposed to dedicated right-of-way by virtue of a plat, that would be a great idea potentially. If the property was a buildable lot, then you could sell it. You're right.
Okay. Well, just thought I'd ask a question. Thank you for the explanation. Any other questions from council? Hearing none, the motion on the table is to schedule the public hearing for May 18th, 2015, here in the Oviedo City Council chambers. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our second first reading of ordinances. This one is ordinance number 1622, and lo and behold, it is related to the vacation process. Mr. Groot, can you read this ordinance by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, providing for the vacation or abandonment of city interest in real property, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for processes and procedures, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for a savings provision, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date. That's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb?
thank you, Mayor. This is a request for the City Council to change the way that we handle vacations of right-of-ways. Under the current process, we must adopt an ordinance, which requires a reading before the City Council, requires a public hearing before the City Council, requires an advertisement before the public hearing. And what we've been looking at is that in most cases, this right-of-way was dedicated to us through a plat that was handled by the City Council without the adoption of an ordinance. And to vacate the right-of-way, now we have to adopt an ordinance. So what we're asking you is to give us the ability to bring this to you as a resolution so that you won't have to go through the statutory ordinance adoption process. It'll make it much easier for applicants to go through the process. Now, the city staff side of it won't change. We'll still do the entire review. We'll still contact all the franchise utilities. We'll still contact the county. We'll still go through all the things that we do to prepare for the ordinance, or to prepare for the right-of-way vacation. But we just felt like that it's not created through an ordinance, so why should we undo it through an ordinance? And that it would be better served to have this done as a resolution. And so our recommendation to you is to schedule a public hearing for May the 18th, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. I'd like to entertain a motion to schedule a second public hearing for ordinance number 1622 on May the 18th, 2015, here at Oviedo City Hall in the Oviedo City Council Chambers, 400 Alexandria Boulevard, Oviedo, Florida, 32765 at approximately 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Multiple seconds. Councilman Schenk, any questions?
No, thank you, Ron.
Deputy Mayor?
No, good.
Councilman Henkin? Councilman Britton?
Good.
All righty. Hearing no questions, I will call the vote. Motion on the table is to schedule the second public hearing for May 18th here at Oviedo City Hall. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving along, we're up to the resolution portion of our meeting. We're up to item number 15. This is resolution number 2978-15, and it is a site development order number 435-14. Mr. Cobb, can you help us with this?
Hi, thank you, Mayor. This is a request for City Council to consider an amendment to the approved preliminary subdivision plan for Foster Groves, as well as an amendment to the site development order that approved the preliminary development plan. The total land area is approximately 44.43 acres. The approved subdivision is 94 single-family residential lots. The approved subdivision plan is for a gated community with private streets. As the applicant has moved forward with the development process, they've found that they need to make the streets public. And so they're asking for an amendment to the preliminary subdivision plan and the site development order in order to allow for there to be public streets. My understanding is that the lot layout will not change. The types of buildings to be constructed will not change. The only thing that will change is that the streets would be public instead of private. The applicant and the representative are here tonight, and I would recommend that you allow them to present this to you. But it's recommended that the City Council adopt resolution number 2978-15.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Will the applicant come forward, state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Chad Moorhead, Madden Moorhead and Glunt. Engineer, also have Justin Allen with MI Homes here with me as well. When the project was approved, there was a condition, additionally approved. It was condition number 2. It's just stated that the site development order is conditioned on the applicant's provision of documentation to the city, reasonable, acceptable to the city attorney, signed by each of the property owners, and it has several different property numbers. And basically what's happened is, as we went through the process trying to get the applications done, we were not able to get one of those property owners to sign the right-of-way vacate on Lee Avenue in order to make it a private gated zone. Thus, we're here tonight asking for subdivision streets to be public. Job is correct. Nothing else in the subdivision has changed other than removing the gating and changing the entry feature just slightly so that there are no walls or signs or anything in the right-of-way.
So, Chad, Mr. Mayor? So one person who, house isn't even built yet, I guess, has an interest, doesn't want this. Everybody else wants a private zone. One person is holding up this to be a private zone.
Yes.
And you guys are okay with that?
We don't have a choice. We had to get them to sign on, and they've chosen not to.
Why wouldn't you have a choice, though?
An external property owner along the outside.
When we Lee Avenue is a public right of way right now, and we would have to vacate Lee Avenue, the north-south section, in order to make it a private subdivision. From a marketing perspective, MI has looked at it, and since the subdivision sits so far off of 426, kind of weighed the options, decided that the won't hurt the home values at all because it does sit back. It's not right on 426. So they've looked at it. Like I said, if they could, they would still get it. it's come to this. We've been working on it for months, trying to get that done.
Mr. Mayor? So there'll be public roads, not private roads. Does that, you said something about the walls. Are you still going to have an entrance? And
We will still have an entry feature, and one of the slight changes is right at the beginning of the subdivision. We've made 2 landscape/signage tracks on each side of it to put some entry feature on there. So it's not in the right-of-way. It has 2 little separate tracks.
And you're still going to keep the houses as you originally planned?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
type of house and how big it is? And
The lineup
cost?
is still the same.
Okay. So it'll have a nice entrance?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's it?
Anything else? Councilman Shane? Councilman Britton? Well, Chad, I'm going to take a different view. You know, I really think that by taking down the gate on this particular community, that you're lessening it and cheapening it. You know, the whole part about this when it started with Standard Pacific was to make it into an executive community, something that Oviedo is terribly lacking in, and the gate was a big part of that. You know, to date, I don't think I've seen any renderings of homes that you want to build in there. I don't.
We have those with us.
Okay.
See those.
Well, that's good. You know, changing that entrance, you know, seems simple enough, but it wasn't the intent nor what was presented to all the homeowners who were here at the time, who lived in the area. You know, all thought this was going to be a gated community. Now I see none of those homeowners here, and we're making a substantial change to it. So I personally am not comfortable with that. I think that you should go back, do whatever you have to do to get that easement signed. You knew that coming into it. You know, you're turning this into an Anywhere USA subdivision from something that started with a different home builder with a higher standard, and now we're turning it into square boxes. I mean, we could have let Meritage build it then. So, you know, I'm personally not comfortable with it.
If you'd like, we can
Yes,
distribute
please,
the
bring 'em up.
renderings that Justin has with him. You can see what they're planning.
And I realize you're not M&I, you're just the poor guy who gets to design it all. I
Poor
understand.
guy that gets to stand up.
That's right. We'll pass them all down. Square boxes, guys, sorry. I walk in and out of them all day long. Did you ever see the renderings of what was? I realize what was isn't what's going to be, but what it was originally proposed to be?
I have not seen those.
Okay. Well, it's not what you're presenting to us this evening. Starting price?
Mid to high 300s.
I'm sorry?
Mid to high 300s to over 500.
Originally, it started as about a $500,000 or $600,000 subdivision. And executive homes. Meeting a need in our community. We have plenty of this. And you've got a special piece of land there.
Are these kind of the same models that you're doing out on 419, Rawlins Landing? I would say these look like this.
Same style.
Honestly, Mayor, if we hadn't spent the last, I think we were December, spent since December to this point, get these people on board.
Chad, clarify for me just one more time. Person who won't be on board. What's
They own the property frontage right at the beginning to the subdivision. And they have to sign on in order for that right-of-way to be vacated. The initial intent is that they would access their house right behind our gates.
They're not gonna be in the subdivision.
They're just before it.
They don't even own it. They're not gonna be in there, but yet they're holding it up the way you guys would have wanted to.
Okay, now wait a second. He said something important there. They were going to access their home from behind your gate, and was that the issue? So guys, just redesign the front of it, and if you lose a lot or two, that's what happens. I see it now. I see the driveway.
You see what it is?
Yeah, it's just south of track D. Well, what appears to be track O, maybe. I can't quite read it. I see where the gate is. I see where that drive is. Either reconfigure their drive or lose a lot or two and reconfigure your entranceway. Then you've got.
I mean, we've looked into that. Losing the lots would be substantial to them. It also changes the subdivision quite a bit more than just moving it back and doing stuff where we have the entry, the road that comes in from the eastern side. That creates an issue. Put gates in.
Was this person just absolutely no, you've been negotiating, you can't come, you can't.
Our corporate attorneys have been negotiating with their attorneys for months now.
Have they made you an offer to do
And
it?
they will not sign the agreement.
No matter what.
You said, I'm sorry,
Got it?
are you done? You said that they will access their house inside your gates, if that's
was
the
the
case.
initial plan.
Does that make them a part of your development? And are they then having to pay the homeowners' fees?
I don't know if they were going to have to pay the homeowners fees. I think that was just part of the deal. They were going to be inside the gate.
Can't you just reconfigure their access? You have the Klontz property to the south. Right, so that is the Klontz home? Well,
Tried and tried and tried. For lack of trying.
my fear, guys, is that you're just going anywhere USA. That's what that is. I mean, I can go anywhere and find that square box of a home. You know, this neighborhood, when we were first discussing it, again, I sound like a broken record. It was being built by a different developer. It had a custom look to it. That doesn't. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. It's up to whatever the council wants to do.
Mr. Cobb? Why is this a site development? What are the deviations on this, or why? What's causing this to?
I'm sorry?
Why is it a site development order? What deviations, or what brings it as a? I mean, what makes this that we need this agreement?
Because the original site development order said it was going to be gated, and now they're trying to remove that.
No, I know why we're coming back. What was the original reason?
Why did we require that the property owners adjacent to the right-of-way sign off on them being made private? Is that the question you're answering?
I know it's a PUD, I guess. Why? This is a PUD. That's
No,
why-
it's not a PD. It's
So
a
why is
standard
it-
subdivision.
Standard subdivision.
Standard subdivision. It had a request, the original subdivision had a request that the Lee Avenue, which is currently a public right-of-way,
Right.
that it would be made private. There are certain properties that currently access Lee Avenue, have frontage on Lee Avenue. And so by making them private, they have access to a public street. And so by making it private, then we would be, I'm not sure the exact word I should be using here, Mr. Groot, but we would be affecting their access, okay? And so the site development order that approved the private subdivision stated that you've got to get agreement from these folks that have access to a public street, that they understand they're going to have access to a private street, and they have to agree to it. And so the dilemma is, according, as Mr. Moorhead said, they weren't able to get the property owners to agree to access to a private street. They want to maintain their access to a public street. Mr. Groot, I'm not going the right way.
I'm trying to look at any other,
Yeah.
I'm going to say, odd part of this site development order, besides this, that took a public street, was going to make it private, now it's going to flip back public. All of it.
It'll stay the way it is.
It'll stay the way it is,
Yes.
and then their streets will be public.
Yes.
And then the only deviation I see in here is a 0.05 deviation of 6.5.
And that's only on 3 lots.
Right, and that's the
So-
only real deviation.
That's correct, and it meets code.
Otherwise, it meets code.
Yes, sir.
They have to go through the process, meet code for everything else,
Yes, sir.
all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Is there any other, Chad, is there any other thing that you see where you can see? Mayor brought up a great point, I remember, wanting this and working on it. Not here, thinking they would get engaged. Any other engineering perspective?
Not without reconfiguring it substantially.
Wow. Was this publicly noticed to all those homeowners, Brian? Was the property flagged with orange signs like we usually do?
This is not a public hearing, Mayor, so as far as notice requirements, you didn't have notice requirements for it.
So it was a public hearing when we approved it, but now to undo it, it's not a public hearing.
No,
So
sir.
those folks don't even know we're undoing it.
It was a public hearing when it went through the comprehensive plan amendment and the zoning amendment change. When it went through the subdivision, the PSP, originally went through the PSP, it was not a public hearing. It was a resolution just like this.
Right, but we had them present all that to us during the comp plan hearing, so the folks got to see at least what the
Yes, sir.
subdivision
During
was
the
gonna
comp
look
plan
like.
and zoning, yes, you did conduct public hearings.
Right, and we also had them present the subdivision plan to us during that hearing. I remember asking the applicant to bring it here to show everybody what it was going to be like, and so now we're going to undo it without them being notified. I'm just not comfortable with any of this. So, that's just my 2 cents.
Mr. Mayor, may I chime in?
Sure.
Councilman Hangan asked you a question about it being possible to reconfigure the entrance. And I'm sorry, but I just didn't hear you, what you had said, what your answer was.
It would be a substantial reconfiguration of the property.
When you say substantial, what would you be looking, can you just give me a brief summary of it?
We'd have to change the roads around and try to fit the entry in here just beyond the one property that has the issue. I don't know how to explain it any more than that, other than we had the gates basically right in front of the one little out parcel where the house is. We would have to come up with a design to push those gates back in there, figuring everything, stormwater,
Because I have to agree with the mayor on this issue. I do remember talking about this quite a while ago, and me thinking it's going to be a different type of development, not the 300,000, but the 500,000. So I was glad to hear him say that, because that's what I was remembering. And I asked the city manager today about, without a gate, were the houses going to be the same that we thought they were going to be. So now they're not going to seem to be the same, because I think when you remove the gate, it does put a different feel on the neighborhood. So I myself I'm uncomfortable with that also.
Our business plan has not changed with the removal of the gates at all. We're offering the same floor plans at the same pricing that we would if we had the gate or if we didn't.
Well, this is the
MI's
first,
business plan.
I don't mean to interrupt, but this is the first time that this is being brought into us, your floor plans and price points. It isn't what we've been told. So
I don't know what's been told from Standard Pacific since MI's in the project and our business plan. That's been what we're going to be offering. Either way, it's.
Well, I don't think we ever saw pictures or anything like that, or drawings, but I remember that was what we were told, was that 500,000.
Well, we have plans that we'll be selling for over 500,000.
well,
I know these are different, these are a little different. Pay close attention to the Owens Landing, because I still have to turn lane. They kind of look like Owens Landing. If they're a little upgraded, they're soft. I think that's where everybody's going. They kind of look like the regular MI subdivision that if you jump on your website and look at a lot of homes, you don't see that wow that we've been here on Castle for a long time. Not your fault, but the person who was here before you, they had some,
I mean, we offer a quality home. We're the only home builder to offer a 30-year structural warranty. We back our.
that has to stay with us. Just give that to Barbara.
you didn't need this, but you can just get the document. Copy of it.
Well, that being said, I think there's changes that are coming to light tonight that none of the five of us were aware of. But I'd like to propose, and it's entirely up to the council. I still have to conduct the public hearing. I haven't done that yet, but why don't I do that? Let me open it up to the public first, see if there's anybody here to speak, and then we'll make a motion of some sort. I have no written request to speak on this item. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address council on resolution number 2978-15? Name and address for the record, sir.
1954 Crystal Downs Court. I believe if there are certain expectations of the people who live in the area, that those people should be informed of that activity.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to address council? Somebody's walking in. Sir, are you in here to address council on resolution 2978-15? No? No? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the meeting. What I'd like to propose to the council is that we can continue this item, resolution 2978-15, until a date uncertain in the future, and let M&I Homes go out and see if they can, A, work this out, and B, at a minimum, publicly notice the property that there is a substantial change being discussed, so the folks that are around it are at least aware of it. If they don't want to come down and speak on it that night, that's fine, but that's what I would like to see happen, but I cannot make motions. Yes, sir.
No.
Yeah.
If in some way MI chooses to reconfigure it, gate it, do we need to come back, or does that just meet the intent of the initial approval?
Well, you got to get your PSP reapproved, but it would meet the intent, I would assume. I mean, I haven't asked the council yet, so I can't speak
Okay.
for them.
I wanted to ask a question.
I'm sure Mr. Groot will tell you the 12 other steps that are involved, but
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think it's just important to remember two things. One, if you do deny this, you have to cite the comp plan or land development code as to why. And number two is an action that effectively denies, which could be a continuance to a date uncertain, could be effectively a denial. So if you're going to continue it, you certainly have that in your discretion, but I would do it to a reasonable day certain.
Okay.
Because they're entitled to a decision.
Mr. Groot, what's a reasonable date? 30 days?
Well, what's the basis for? Is it because you have to? It depends upon what. If the reason was, it has to be based upon some evidence that is material, that wasn't considered, wasn't available to you. So,
evidence that wasn't material to me at the time was the presentation to us was one certain expectation, where they're asking us for another. Whether in legal terms they can or can't isn't the issue. And the second pertinent issue would be is the surrounding homeowners also have an expectation, as they were notified of that expectation, and now they're not notified when we're going to change it.
So I think the submission of the renderings would clearly warrant a continuance to the next meeting. But to impose, quite frankly, a standard of notice upon any particular developer that isn't typical could be a problem. And this is not a public hearing, and each PSP isn't. So I think it'd be hard to say to a developer that you have to have a public hearing when the code doesn't require it. So that could be. There's nothing wrong between now and the next meeting to have staff notify all those who appeared at the last meeting, for example.
Okay.
That would be perfectly appropriate.
Well, help us out.
Mr. Groot, would it then be appropriate, could we just continue this until, let's say, the May 4th meeting? Mr. Moorhead kind of just said that maybe he can go back and see if they could work it. 2 weeks was reasonable. Maybe come back here in 2 weeks and put it on just like it is now, and see if he can do it. Because I think what Chad, you were saying is if you could reconfigure it, do you need to go through all of this other stuff again, correct? So if we could continue it for 2 weeks while you investigate that, and you came back May 4th and you say, hey, we can reconfigure it and it's good, Mr. Groot, could we then approve it?
Oh, sure. You could ask staff to notify all people who attended the last meetings that spoke or otherwise appeared.
Mr. Hinkin, I would recommend that you make it May 18th. Okay. Just for trying to work with submittal deadlines and putting your packages together, making sure that you have all your information prior to the meeting. May 4th, we're actually in the submittal time right now for May 4th, and so it would not really help Mr. Moorhead to say May 4th.
Now, with the resolution, is public hearings, you notice the property, would it be still appropriate to notify those homeowners that there was a change, or Mr. Groot was getting into that, or we just make it like this and see how it goes? Could we still notice the homeowners on a resolution?
You can't convert what isn't a public hearing to a public hearing, but you can certainly have staff notify all people who were present at the prior meetings, that's fine.
The applicant's done all they are legally required to do, correct?
Right.
And you're saying that we can, as the city, notify those people who did speak previously and tell them.
Sure, nothing wrong with that.
I think I can make a motion if you
Or
want.
the developer could volunteer to do that
Or no,
themselves.
yeah, either way, I'm just saying, but they've done all they're required to do legally.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor,
Let's get them up, yes.
I want to get a couple clarifications. Sure, of course. First one is they have come before us for a change that involved a gate versus a not gate, private roads versus not private roads, and we're asking them to go back to see if they can go back to what the original plan was, which was to have a gate and a private road. And I think the question was, if they go back and reconfigure that, there's no change that they're asking for. Is that correct? So therefore, they don't have to come back.
That's up to Mr. Groot.
Well, the original plan had a gate with private roads. This plan has no gate with public roads.
Right.
So there's no change they have to make. They can. And they're if I got what's the question? Maybe I missed it.
Well, that's the change.
If they reconfigure,
If they
they're going to have to.
I thought I was talking.
Sorry, I apologize.
It's a technical question. It's a technical standard either way. Does the applicant conform?
But if he
comply
does
with
go
land
back and
development code or not?
reconfigure and put a gate in and reconfirms that the roads will be private, then what is the change he would be asking for?
Mr. Britton, let me see if I can help you out here. The site development order gives approval for a 94-lot, single-family subdivision, gated with private streets. There's a condition within the site development order that says those who currently have access to a public road have to agree to that road becoming public. Okay, if they were to reconfigure the subdivision, and the resulting subdivision was 94 lots or less, then they would not have to come back to you. And the key word, not have to come back, if it was 94 lots or less. The 94 lots is the maximum development that they can do. Okay? That's what they're approved for. Now, if they reconfigure it and it results in less than 94 lots, then they are still within, and it's still a private street, they're still within the original approval by the city council. They can move forward with the staff through the construction process. They're still within it. That modification, it's not even considered a modification. It's still what Dr. Correa would say is consistent with council's original approval.
Okay. Well, that was my question. I think you've answered it.
Okay.
The second clarification was regarding the renderings, and I believe, Mr. Groot, you said that was a material example for continuing this?
In order to consider the difference, I'm not sure it makes any difference legally, but it's certainly a grounds to consider and to review. It's something that you hadn't seen before this evening, so you could.
Okay.
If you need the time to review those, then you can, of course.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clarification. And I had another one, but I forgot what it was, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the first one, so that's all I have.
Councilman Henkin?
Yeah, I'll just make the motion, and the motion would be to continue Resolution 297815 to the May 18th meeting to give the applicant time to see if he can reconfigure the gate and come back and let us know what's happening. Mr. Groot, one more question. If Chad and MI are able to figure this out, then they will not have to come back. They can just go on. If they call Brian, hey, we got a gate, it's going in, do they still have to show us the placement of it and come back on the 18th and have us approve it? Because we haven't approved anything yet, right? would they still have to show us the new placement of the gate if they're able to do it? Would we have to approve that, or does it matter? They can just march on?
No, sir, there would be no need for the amendment.
Okay, so then it's just a continuance to the May 18th meeting pending their contact to you.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'll say.
I'd like to add one addendum to that, if I may, as a suggestion. If it does have to come back, that the homeowners are notified either by them or by us. It doesn't matter who does it. If it does have to come back for a hearing, Mr. Cobb, anybody who spoke at the original hearings, we'll try our best to send them all a letter. I'm sure we have their address to let them know. And in the letter, you can clearly state whatever the changes they're asking for, because it might not be an issue to them. But at least we would have tried to have notified them. Agreed? Second to agree? All righty. Motion on the table is to continue for 4 weeks. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Moving on to discussion items. We're up to item 16. There are none. Mr. Cobb, we're up to your report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just had one thing. This Wednesday, April the 22nd, will be my 2-year anniversary of you appointing me as interim city manager. And just
Already?
just wanted to say thank you. And
You know what's a great sign is that you still have the same amount of hair. So
I don't know about that. I know there's more gray.
And you're smiling.
I still enjoy coming to work every day, and I appreciate the opportunity.
well, we appreciate having you, Brian. Mr. Groot.
I have nothing to add this evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Excellent. Councilman Henkin.
Keep up the good work, Ryan. Congratulations, brother. All good.
Councilwoman Drago.
I don't have much. I just have to tell you that I've walked through Oviedo in the Park 3 times this week, and I am absolutely loving it. I go down there, we walk around, we just sit there, we go to the different parts, we see what's being done, what's new there, and that park is just, I'm just in awe of it. They're doing a great job, and I cannot wait until it's, well, I guess I can wait till it's open, because now I have it all to myself when I go. But I think everybody is going to be so pleasantly thrilled with it when it finally opens, and we have the celebration on the 16th. So I just wanted to share that. I just had a great time this morning there.
Good for you. Anything else, Councilman?
No, that's it.
All righty. Who's next? Councilman Britton.
Real quick, I have one item I want to go over. This is a follow-up from our last meeting where I announced I was going to meet with the owners of the Twin Rivers Golf Course.
Oh, okay.
And I have a memo here of record from Brian, who sat in on the meeting with us. I'll pass that out. Barbara's got a copy of it. And I'll just summarize my thoughts on the meeting.
Is there a copy there for everybody?
Yeah. Those that attended the meeting were Brian, myself, Mr. Chad Barton, Mr. David Evans, the engineer, Chad Barton's the owner, and Mr. Randy Morse, who's an advisor to the owners. Just a little bit of background. They gave us some information that they've been working on this proposal since 2011, which was a surprise to me because we're quite a few years down the road. Those discussions resulted in what they call Plan 1, which is described in the memo, which was to put homes on the golf course and reconfigure the course, relocate the clubhouse. I think we're all familiar with that. They went on to say that since that much time has gone on, that they are now proposing a Plan 2, which would close the course and then come back at a later time to add homes in a different area, what's now the golf course, that would be within the Econ River environmental protected area. They didn't really ask for anything from us, but they indicated that they'd like to have a discussion to clarify these things with the HOA and the City Council. Now, with with a discussion with Mr. Groot. Mr. Groot does not recommend that the city council participate in any forum like that, but that we could maybe facilitate it between the HOA and the owners and not offer an opinion or not participate in I guess, an active manner, but to be there. And that's pretty much where they stand. The owners indicated that they wanted to submit one of those two proposals in the near future. I'd hate to see the course close, which was their option two. I think there was an indication that that would require litigation, and they were willing to do that. But like I said, there wasn't really anything there offered for us as a city council to consider, other than that what their situation is and what they are prepared to do.
Okay, so I'm just reading through here. So we need to schedule, you're asking to schedule a workshop that we don't participate in, we just listen, so everybody hears the same information once.
Right.
Between the property owners and the Twin Rivers HOA.
Right. And
just the HOA, or I mean, obviously
the HOA board, I believe, is who they don't want to make it an open forum. They've had one of those and it didn't go well. I think what the clarification would be is that the information being bantered about is that there's a possibility of a buyer for the course. The owner doesn't think that's viable. The HOA has indicated that that's still in play. So we need to run that option down to make sure that it's exhausted before anything else goes on. And the owners agreed to go on and have these discussions one more time before they make their decision.
Well, there is an email at City Hall from...
I haven't seen it, so if you know about that, you can announce
Mr. Cobb needs to share that with everybody. It's been shared with the HOA. They have it. Mr. Cobb, could you share that with
I'd be happy to.
The entire council? It should have been on the memorandum, but since it isn't, I think it's important that the council see the results of the meeting we had back in December, was it?
I think it was December.
With the potential buyer, the HOA, and the results of that. So, Councilman Britton, what action would you like any of us to take on this, or the council to take on this? I'm sorry.
Well, I think we should, at the very least, notify the HOA of the owner's intent, and to see if they want to schedule a meeting, either a public forum or not, or we can facilitate it ourselves as a third party, but not participate. Is that pretty much your advice, Lonnie?
Yes. The only thing I would note is there will be no, if you all agree to that forum, call the forum, there would be no decision made, so there would be no public input.
Right. There is no decision before us.
Right. It would just be, it would simply be a listening session for us, and the discussion would be between the HOA board and the property owners.
That's why I understand it too.
Right. So it's really not even a workshop or a public hearing.
That's why I said
This is
forum.
just a forum.
It's a forum. Yes,
Right.
sir.
For us to possibly sit up here on the dais, set it up down there, we're not even in the discussion. We're just listening.
That's correct.
And why would you recommend that we do that?
Well, if
Quite honestly, from the previous discussions to now, it seems like a big swing of what needs to come as public and be in the public and done as public presentation versus us sitting as five in a meeting that somebody else has listening.
You don't have
and
to
facilitating listening to this. I don't understand. They can get together at any time and should encourage it, the HOA and that. But I don't know why we would. I only see future problems in us being more involved if, as he said, they're interested in going to litigation if they don't get their way. I think it muddies the water just by us even facilitating a meeting and being part of any kind
But
of...
don't get me wrong, because I'm not recommending that you do it. I'm saying that this is, if you do it, this is the only way I would recommend that you do it.
Right.
Well,
And I think you're feeling the same way, right?
I'm going to take a different tact on this. I think it's good that Councilman Britton sat with them, brought this back to us, and I think it's important that we all hear what's going on, because, you know, point of contact has been one of us, staff, and now Councilman Britton. And everybody needs to realize exactly, and everybody needs to realize and come to the realization of what the options are here. Because they're heading down a path that once they start that path, if we don't sit and discuss with them, if they start the path, one of these two options, it's going to be litigation for years. It'll be taxpayer dollars, it'll be everything that we're drug into. Well, let me rephrase. It could be litigation for years. And you could end up with a situation that other communities are facing. So it is just time for everybody to sit down and have, you know, conversations, I believe. And make a decision one way or another, however we all want to go.
To your point, we're also a third party in this, as one of the options turns the golf course over to the city. So if we're not at least informed of that and able to prepare to make a decision one way or the other, then I think that any other discussions may not even be worthwhile having.
And that's true. Well, why don't we, this is just put in front of us tonight. Why don't we all take 2 weeks, think this through, and Mr. Cobb, why don't you have it as a discussion item on our next agenda, but the discussion item is just going to be, are we going to have a forum or not?
Okay.
And if we're going to have a forum, then we'll notify the owners, the HOA, and those members. I think it's important that we all sit here, that way we all hear it one time, we all hear it together. And as Mr. Groot says, we speak, we don't speak. And we have no opinion. But, you know, we keep trying to ignore this problem, hoping it'll go away. And I don't get the feeling it's going away. But, and Mr. Groot gave us very sound legal rendering that we can hang our hat on. Right? You wrote that about a year and a half ago? Your manifesto, your 7 or 8 page.
I'm convinced I'm right. So,
Mr. Groot, I have all the faith in the world in you, and I guess the only one who can prove that up or down would be a judge at some other level.
that's exactly right, sir.
So, but if I'm reading this right, Plan 2 is they want to go outside of that area. So that would mean fairways. Is that what I'm reading here?
Well, Plan 2 is the closure of the course, and then I don't know if there's any. It's a question for Lonnie whether putting houses on it is automatically allowed if they close the course. I think that's another discussion.
Basically, Plan 2 takes all of the proposed development outside of the Econ-Lakachi River 1,100-foot protection zone is what it does. And it does, as Mr. Britton says, it requires them to close the golf course because there won't be enough of a golf course left in order to operate one.
And that's assuming that they could even legally do that. I mean,
Yeah,
none
well,
of that is
that was
explored.
my next step is to tell you is that would require an amendment to the plan unit development.
Can I just make one comment? I agree 100% with Councilman Schenk. I think we've gone way too far with this. I will not come to those meetings. I want them in front of me when they bring something official that they're asking us to vote on. Because to me, there's so much conversation going on. I don't mind if the mayor or Councilman Britton attend some meetings, and they have in the past, to try to, you know, maybe
facilitate this, but I just think it sets a bad, when the five of us are together, we got to be here to make decisions. And Mr. Groot, with all due respect, I mean, you know, if we do it, that's whatever. I just think this is so sensitive. We now have what they want to do right in front of us, so they need to make a decision. Either do it or don't. But they got to come before us to get some approval to do something. And I would just, I don't see, I already know what they want to do. We just read it right here. So I don't see, I think it's uncomfortable for two sides to sit there and talk. It's kind of like the meeting you're having with all the shareholders for the LDC. The five of us should not be there. We have the mayor there. He's doing a great job with it. You know, maybe one could go there and listen, but they need to, whatever they want to do, they need to bring it to us. We have to make a decision, yes or no. I don't need any more info because I already have it. And Keith, you did a great job with it. But I think that's kind of unusual just for us sitting here and kind of doing it. And I think it also puts a lot of heat on the two parties here with us. You know, it's like they're trying to convince us. You know, we're sitting as a jury, so to speak, but yet we can't make any decision, we can't talk. And that's the hardest part. You know, to me, this, when it comes to us, wouldn't it not be one of these quasi-judicial hearings? That's what we told everybody. I typed, you know, thousands of emails to homeowners. I'll listen to everybody when it comes, and I'll make my decision. So I think being here, just my opinion, I could be wrong, but these guys got to make their decision, tell us what they want to do, and bring it to us so we can vote up and down. I mean, we have it right here. That's just my thought. You know, I agree with Councilman Schenk.
The problem is we don't want them to shut the golf course.
I agree with you there.
And,
tough one.
and Mr. Cobb, myself, I know Mr. Britton, for 3 years have been asking them, don't shut the golf course until you make a submittal. You know, we don't want them going Plan 2, because once they shut it, the course is gone.
But
After 90 days, it's not a golf course anymore.
But it's still up to question. I mean, Mr. Groot put out a ruling. I mean, could they, even if they did do that, could they build the houses if they shut the course down? We don't know that to be true.
Right, but if they shut the course down, if we don't keep
Well,
at
then
least a
it's shut.
discussion,
Yeah.
then it's shut
Yeah,
down.
I hear you. I
And
know.
then
It's tough.
it's, what was it, Brian, $2 million or something to bring them back, or $1 million to bring it back?
It's in the millions to bring it back. It's between $1 and $2 million just to bring it back.
So that's why and I know this is very uncomfortable. Trust me, because I've been stuck in the middle of it for 2 years. But I don't like that position either, because our residents think sometimes that I'm the one driving the train. I'm not driving the train. I'm trying to save the golf course. That's the difference. And Councilman Britton, I was so happy that he finally got a chance to hear it, because now I'm not the only one saying it. You know, it's right here. And these are the consequences that we have to think through, and ultimately it'll be our decision, of course, but it would be so much better if we could get the HOA and the owners to sit down and come up with something that everybody could live with. And if that's a buyer, great. Get the buyer in here and have them write a check.
I agree with you. But could they not meet by themselves?
I mean, I've spoken to 2 different buyers for this course, and you know, neither one of them are writing a check right now.
No, I'm saying, but could they not meet by themselves without us?
Yeah, I
there?
guess they could, but you know, hopefully they'll
I
meet
could-
and have a fruitful conversation.
I could sign on to the us listening, but I would prefer them have one bang out on their own and see if they could come up
And
with
then
something.
have them come into a public hearing.
And then come into it here. That's what I would like. I'd like to see the 2 of them get together. Colonel, you're taking notes now. To get together, try to work this out, and see however long it takes. And then when you got some stuff, come back to us then. It's just kind of weird just sitting up here with not being able to make a decision, you know? And they haven't talked yet, so that has the makings of bad.
Well, technically, it'll never come back to you until there's an application.
Right.
That's, I mean, I'm not a big proponent of this, but like the mayor, I mean, the mayor's nailed it in that the word facilitate, you know, you can't have one of you all facilitate it, because that puts one of you all in danger of having your vote
Well, that's staff can
lost at the
facilitate
meeting.
it.
So,
And staff can and has been facilitating it, and they can report back to us and can help us understand back and forth what's going on. But, you know, my concerns are for the future, where I look at, we've seen this play out somewhere before, just down the road in Castleberry. They made some mistakes, and it didn't work out in the best interest for them. And I don't want to be caught by accident
right.
making the mistakes or having some things happen legally that we don't foresee, that if it does end up down the road, that we end up in a tragic position that we facilitate. That's my only concern.
And Stephen, actually, that's a good point. And Councilman Hankins said the same thing, and it looks like Councilwoman is starting to sort of agree with Councilman Hankins and Councilman Schenk.
Well, let me start by saying I realize this is a very important issue. I really do. I know people love the golf course. They want to keep it. But I do struggle with that we sit here and kind of facilitate meetings, and we've never done that before. I think that they own the property. They want to make something work it out with the HOA, and then have staff there. They can fill us in. We can sit with Mr. Cobb. I think that it would set a precedence. Okay. So what's to say then when another developer comes in and they want to do something, they're having trouble with the HOA, so they want to come in, so we sit and listen.
You know how many of those we sat through with Walmart before Walmart actually came in here 20 years ago? But you're right, the scars are endless.
It does have a large-scale effect, what can happen, and I understand that. I don't want to, that's, to poo-poo that or put to the side. This, if, they're coming at us with a couple, if they have more to say, but
why don't we do this?
There are some large-scale implications if they close down the golf course, and I understand that and I agree with you 100%.
That's, guys, for 3 years, I've been begging Chad and his partners, do not shut down the golf course.
And I understand that importance and don't want that.
Because that is usually the first call that Mr. Cobb gets is, as of next week, I'm closing down the golf course. Then my next phone call is, Chad, that's not a good idea, don't do that.
You even said please.
I have. I've been very nice to him. Mr. Cobb, it sounds like general consensus is up here that the council is going to err on the side of caution, which is good. It makes Mr. Groot happy. He can sleep tonight. Mr. Cobb, why don't you facilitate a meeting between staff, Mr. Barton and his team, and the HOA board. That way you can control the meeting. And by control, I just mean it won't be busloads of people. I don't mean to, not trying to exclude anybody, but let the HOA have who they want, be their board members, their attorney, I'm sure. Mr. Groot probably be a good idea if you're there. Mr. Cobb and whatever staff members you want, and you could have it here in the council chambers. It's technically not a public meeting. All the options as they were presented to Mr. Britton can be presented. Mr. Cobb, you're a copious note taker. You can put together the same memorandum and hand it out to the 5 of us, and then we'll know exactly what went on there.
The one thing that I will not be able to do is if they ask the question about whether or not the city is willing to take on the golf course.
Don't answer it.
The answer will, I cannot answer that. That is purely up to the city council. So
don't answer it.
I mean, that is one thing that will be left undetermined coming out of that.
But that'll be, if that's a presentation made to council, then to Councilman Hankins' comments, that's a decision then that's made in the public.
Right.
That'll be a decision of the 5 of us at that point.
Exactly.
But we've got to get to something that we can have 2 groups standing in front of us saying, you know what, none of us got everything we want, but this is what we could live with. And then we can make a decision on that, whether the city wants to live with it.
That'd be good.
Does that about sum it up, I guess?
Yeah, just
That'd be good.
to close that out, I think what we have in the memorandum is a bracket of different options, of which there's a lot of room, I'll call it wiggle room, to get to that point where it's acceptable to everyone versus not acceptable to anyone.
Well,
I think that's what the goal will be.
We could change 1,000 things when they come in, too. So.
Right. So that's our, I think the real goal here is to get to yes instead of where we're at right now.
Anybody else on this issue? Mr. Cobb, you good? Or do you need any other clarification from us?
I would ask that you remove your direction to have a discussion item at the next meeting.
Oh.
I think you've taken care of that.
I think we beat the dead horse, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Mr. Groot, do you have anything else to add to that, or does that meet your satisfaction?
That was just fine.
All right. Councilman Britton, you still have the floor. We took over your report.
That's enough time. I've taken up enough time.
Okay, Father David. All right, I'm good tonight. Councilman Schenk?
Bless you, my son.
I'll only say, since Brian brought up his, it was my 8th anniversary yesterday. Also.
Was it really?
Yes.
That's right. You were one of those mid-year guys.
I was an off-year
Off-year, special, mid-year.
A special election. Special.
He was a special election.
Can I just clarify one thing? And Mr. Groot, you will be at those facilitated meetings. Or could you? I think.
Or should you?
Or should you? Yeah.
I have no problem attending. I've rendered a written opinion. I think it might be helpful to be there.
Yeah,
Mostly to interact with staff on the side.
that would be good.
If you don't think it's proper for you to be there, then I don't think council's directing you to be there.
No, I
think
think
the
it's-
question was, should you be there?
I think it's fine, and I think I would serve a purpose being able to interact with staff on sidebars.
Yeah.
But I would not make any affirmative statements during the course of those meetings.
Okay, great.
All righty. Councilman Schenk, do you have anything else? Happy, is tonight the actual 8th?
Yeah, I think actually today is really the real date that I got sworn in. I went to yesterday, the day.
Do you want a special proclamation to go with your special year?
Okay.
No? All righty.
And the Boy Scouts are like, yes, it's over. We're going home.
You guys actually picked a good night.
You picked a good night, guys. You got lots of debate.
An hour and 15 minutes, you got a little bit of debate, and it's only an hour and 15 minutes, so I can tell you.
All righty. Mr. Cobb, before I announce future meeting dates, any other business for staff before council?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
Council have any other business?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk, anything? No? Future meeting dates, we have a whole bunch of them, so take notes. Thursday, April 23rd, 6:30 p.m., we have a work session. I believe that one may be, that is the Wilden rate study for the water plant. That's this week. Then we've got Monday, May 4th, regular session, Monday, May 18th, regular session. Thursday, May 21st, we have an LDC work session. Monday, June 1st, we have a regular session. Monday, June 15th, we have a regular session. Thursday, June 18th, we have a LDC work session.
Oh, my goodness.
Monday, June 22nd, 5:30 p.m., we have another work session on the budget. I must ask, on those LDC work sessions, you have 1 hour, because after 1 hour, our eyes are glazing over when it comes to LDC. So Reader's Digest, bullet points. We don't need to crawl down in the weeds, even though Councilman Schenk and I are probably the ones who will go there first. But maybe have little sidebars with us before. That way we can keep them short and sweet.
I appoint you two to be our representatives at those meetings that report back to us at a future discussion item.
I've got an ingrown toenail that night. I got to go fix.
I know. LDC, it's one of the most important things we do next to the budget, and it is, God, the most boring. But anyway, seeing that, no other business, we are adjourned.